and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Junglist. Coming up on the show this week, the zombie horde has infected even more games.
Mutant clones, Jung.
What?
Well, strictly speaking, in Killing Floor, they're mutant clones, the latest survival horror game from the makers of Red Orchestra.
Well, they're definitely the undead in Plants vs. Zombies. Plus the new Guitar Hero Metallica and the latest Ultimate Fighting Championship game, UFC 2009 Undisputed.
Takes him down. Nice left hands.
And Choose Your Own Adventures, Lawrence Leung will be dropping by to share his favourite gaming memory. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Pleased to be reading the news.
Good game.
More surprising developments have emerged following last week's story about the closure of game developer and publisher 3D Realms. The developer behind Duke Nukem Forever was reported to have closed their doors permanently last week amid speculation they were experiencing funding difficulties. However, 3D Realms released a statement this week claiming that they have not yet closed down and that they still hold the rights to the Duke Nukem franchise. Fighting game fans have some news to celebrate this week, with the confirmation that Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is one step closer to getting a Western release. The game, which is the latest in a long line of crossover fighting games made by Capcom, features characters from the Street Fighter, Mega Man, and Beautiful Joe series, battling it out against characters of famed animation studios Tatsunoko Productions, the creators of anime like Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, otherwise known as Battle of the Planets. The game was previously thought to only ever be available in Japan, but recent reports have confirmed that not only will the game be released outside Japan, but that an English language version will be playable at this year's Electronic Entertainment Expo in Los Angeles.
Good game.
The Ultimate Fighting Championship is a real-life mixed martial arts competition popular in the US, and now it's been gamified for next gen, and it's called UFC 2009 Undisputed.
So, you think you're ready for the UFC, huh?
It's time. And we are underway.
The aim of UFC is, of course, to be on top of the ladder. It's a tough game, played and made by tough people who are used to making tough games because they've made wrestling games like SmackDown vs. Raw for a number of years. You play through the tournament Virtua Tennis style, deciding which weeks you want to rest, train, or fight.
Creating your character is fun, but it takes ages, and the stats you pick, such as your hometown or your nickname, actually turn up in the commentary throughout the game.
Coming up next, it's a middleweight matchup between Josh Freeman and Hands of Stone.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of Race Driver Grid, how you could select your name from a list and the game will use it.
Yeah, that was awesome. No Bajo in there though, or Junglist for that matter.
You should write them a letter.
Oh, I have, and it was strongly worded. You'll be invited to tutorial training rounds, photo shoots and events, and the way you progress through the campaign is a bit cumbersome and text-heavy, and occasionally quite confusing.
Yeah, it's already complicated enough as it is. The developers should be applauded for their attention to detail in the moves, and the tutorial will take you over an hour to complete, and you can revisit it, but it's just information overload, and it's hard to remember all of that while you're getting your face smashed in.
I don't know how he's surviving, Joe.
Yeah, it's definitely a technical fighter, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that your average gamer might not want to go into that much depth, so for them, it becomes a bit of a button masher. Anticipating an opponent's move can be hard, especially as blocking takes longer than you'd like, so it's more of a random chance to counter than anything else. You're much better off just spamming dodge and then getting a hook in the side anyway. You can creatively bash your way to rank 11, but by then you better know your groundwork or you're going to get twisted into submission every time.
Trying to set up a submission. He's got it. 2 minutes remains in round number one. Can he do it? It is all over. Tallest, latest submission victory.
There's a lot of ground tussling. Quite a lot, actually.
That is the approach that he takes in his fights.
He lets him up.
There's a lot of moves that require mashing buttons and rotating sticks to transition yourself into a better position.
As far as I can gather, despite the popularity of the sport, the real-life matches aren't that exciting to watch anyway, not as exciting as wrestling, so the game kind of suffers a bit from this slow hold and twist gameplay as well. And I just couldn't get into it, Jung, despite its simulation awesomeness.
I know what you mean. In multiplayer, you're gonna get absolutely owned unless you have a basic understanding of the moves and how to handle groundwork. There is a level that you kind of reach after a lot of practice, and I did like how leg attacks drain your enemy's stamina and speed, and blocking weakens your punching power, but you definitely want to turn on your stamina bar, which is off by default. Hardcore players will love the realism, and multiplayer will be where the fun's at.
I'm new to UFC games, but this game just really wasn't interesting enough for me to want to go in and learn all that depth and go through those tutorials over and over again. The collision detection is fantastic though, and the models look great. You won't find any clipping here. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens. But Jung, I don't need, this is gonna sound really picky, but I don't need 6 or 7 menus telling me that my game has been saved.
Apparently when UFC started, it was a much more no-holds-barred event with not as many regulations, and I kind of had to wonder, would it have been a more fun game with less rules and more locations? Like you say though, Badge, when it comes to realism, it definitely delivers, and it has an audience. That's Undisputed. I'm giving it 7.5. By 2007, gamers had been converted to the joys of simulated axe grinding thanks to Guitar Hero 1 and 2. So anticipation was high when the franchise chose to plunder one of the greatest decades for music ever, the 80s. But with literally thousands of classic songs to choose from, Guitar Hero Encore Rocks the 80s managed to miss all the hits to deliver a track list of second-rate songs few people had actually heard of, let alone liked. And when gamers did start up the one or two that did hit a chord, it was clear that gameplay had taken a dive too. The forgettable flop still managed to sell about 1 million copies. There was a change of developer at the time, but there's really no excuse for this lazy cash-in. Activision, what were you thinking?
Good game.
Brains. They're on the menu yet again. And Jung, is it just me, or does there seem to be a zombie game released every week this year? In fact, there's 2 this week. Yeah. Well, Killing Floor is a remake of an Unreal Tournament 2004 mod, and it's got some meat on it.
Gross, Badge. Although you did rather pedantically inform me earlier on that they're not zombies, but military experimental clones, but yeah, they're zombies. And it's up to you and a maximum of 5 others to cooperatively take down wave after filthy wave of them.
Of course, we know what you're all thinking. Is it Left 4 Dead? And it's similar in game design, but there are some very big differences. For one, it's low production values. This is a smaller downloadable game, but also it runs at a slower pace. And this is actually a really cool thing because it allows you to set up defense points with weldable doors and positioning of your units, such as snipers and support.
In between waves, it'll allow you to purchase new weapons and armor just like Counter-Strike, and the game will urge you to move on to the next vendor point in between waves as well, but you'll find that most people will just leave the last zombie alive in order to get everyone in that vendor point with maximum time to purchase.
They're all dead. It's time to go shopping.
You can zoom in for a more accurate shot, and this is fantastic, but if you're zooming in with the shotgun, you're kind of missing the point of a shotgun. Also, accuracy is quite forgiving. You can take out a mutant from ages away with just a standard pistol and a well-placed shot.
You do get overwhelmed now and then. It's nothing like Left 4 Dead, but there are just these hectic moments where your setup will fall apart and you need to improvise. Especially against the crawlers that like to jump over fences. The rest of the enemies are pretty cool. Most of them are naked for some reason.
Yeah, it must be cold out there in the English landscape. Maybe that's why they're so angry. As you level up your character, you get extra perks, such as a medical perk, which allows your healing to be more effective, support, which gives you more shotgun power, and some of them give you ability to see cloaked enemies from a shorter distance.
Yeah, I like these perks, Badge, but they take a while to level up, and there isn't much of a map selection, so you gotta think that's gonna get pretty boring, but the game is pretty fun. For us, the low ping servers were pretty full, and the server browser is a little buggy.
Summation me, Jung.
It's no Left 4 Dead, but as a downloadable PC game that runs on old hardware, it does quite good. There's no point playing it on your own, and you need to have a microphone if you're going online. No one has time to type with a mutant on your face. Am I right, Badge? 7.5 out of 10 from me.
You often see this kind of gameplay as a mode in other games like Gears 2 and COD World at War, and I really enjoyed Left 4 Dead, but after 8 or 9 hours, I just never wanted to go back to it again, and I think that this kind of gameplay has longevity problems to it, but what I like about Killing Floor is it just gives you lots of weapons and options, and it's not trying to be a big AAA game, it's just a downloadable game that's a bit of fun for a time. I'm giving 8 out of 10.
Good game.
The past few weeks have brought us some sad news about one of the legendary studios in the world of computer game development, 3D Realms. While the dev team behind Duke Nukem Forever may have officially left the building, we thought we'd take a look back at the work and legacy of 3D Realms, backwards compatible style. The 3D Realms story actually begins in the mid-80s with a shareware developer and publisher named Apogee Games, and with games like this. It's called Dungeons of Kroz, and it was a maze-based action game with a fantasy theme. Although you could hardly tell because Kroz's visuals were so primitive that pretty much everything on the screen looked like a big square block. Of course, Apogee didn't just have their games, they also had a unique way of selling them. They practically invented the modern-day shareware formula, where they gave away a portion of the game for free, but made you pay if you wanted the entire experience. It was a formula that worked well, so well in fact that Apogee started publishing other developers' games as well as their own. One of these was id Software, and some of the best games they ever made were the Commander Keen series. The Keen game spanned several sequels, all of which put you underneath the helmet of a kid named Billy Blaze, who had to head jump and shoot his way to defeat an insidious alien race called the Vorticons. Apogee was also responsible for publishing heaps of other shareware games, including id Software's Wolfenstein 3D, the Aussie-developed Alien Carnage, and the lovably awful Cosmo's Cosmic Adventure. But it would be a certain blonde-haired, tank-top muscle man who would really make their name as a game developer. It was, of course, Duke Nukem. With a tough, trash-talking protagonist, a plot involving an ever-reliable alien invasion, and a barrel full of platform action awesomeness, Duke Nukem quickly became one of those PC games that everyone had to have when it was released in 1991. It was followed up with a sequel 2 years later, Duke Nukem 2.
I am back.
Which was in every way bigger, ballsier, and more beautiful than its predecessor. But the Apogee name wasn't destined to stick around forever. With the introduction and subsequent popularity of three-dimensional games, the company changed its name to one more fitting of the times, 3D Realms. And one of the first games to come out under their new moniker was probably their biggest and best. That's right, Duke was back, and this time he was in 3D, in a game called, funnily enough, Duke Nukem 3D. Taking inspiration from id Software's Doom, Duke 3D was a first-person shooter, although it looked far better than anything else on the market at the time. It had plenty of action, over-the-top violence and explosions to keep the trigger-happy occupied, but Duke 3D also added a new and totally unexpected element, LOLs. Epic LOLs, in fact.
Come get some.
Duke was always quick with the one-liner, which is still admired today for their vulgarity and wit.
This sucks.
While the game's often risque settings and situations left a smile on many a gamer's face when it came out in 1996. Alongside Duke 3D, 3D Realms have either developed or published many other hit games over the years. They had huge success in the first-person shooting genre with games like Rise of the Triad. They took the Duke Nukem formula to a modern-day fantasy feudal Japan with Shadow Warrior. They even took a stab at the sword and sorcery genre with the Witch Haven series. And they were the producers behind the film noir-inspired Max Payne, one of the best shoot-'em-ups of its time, and plenty of other games besides. But after all of this came the big one, a game so ambitious and long in production that it has become a thing of gaming legend, Duke Nukem Forever. Duke's new game was to be the follow-up to the blockbusting Duke 3D, and it was going to feature graphics supplied by the same technology that powered id Software's Quake 2. It was first announced in 1997, and it was originally supposed to launch the very next year. But that didn't really happen. You see, Duke Nukem Forever hit a massive developmental brick wall. Instead of sticking with the Quake 2 engine and releasing the game, 3D Realms made a decision that would alter the course of their game and ultimately their company. In an effort to keep Duke Nukem Forever's graphics cutting edge, 3D Realms decided to transport the entire game to the Unreal Engine, the newest and prettiest tech on the block for 1998. The game looked good, and it was now set to come out in 1999. But that didn't happen either. In fact, Duke Nukem Forever had been variously slated for release in 2000, 2001, 2002, pick pretty much any year in the 2000s, and Duke Nukem Forever was supposed to be launched in it, but it just never did. In 2007, we finally saw another glimpse of Duke's flat-topped head in this teaser trailer, which only served to remind us that the game was still in production after 10 long years. Finally, in May of 2009, after 12 years in development hell, there was another twist in the Duke Nukem Forever story when it was announced that 3D Realms didn't have the funds to continue working on the game. The company simply packed the game up, and with very little fanfare, they gave the development team the sack. But with the vaporous ghost of Duke Nukem Forever hanging over their legacy, 3D Realms will be remembered for quite some time as one of the most successful and ill-fated developer stories in the history of games.
Good game.
Furious Fraggers, brace yourselves. We're about to review a casual game. Plants vs. Zombies pits you and your garden versus a horde of swarming zombies. Your only hope is to grow the plants that'll defend your vulnerable skull from this fate. The one resource in the game is sun, which falls from the sky and is also produced by your sunflowers. Clicking on enough suns will allow you to start to plant your damage dealers, which includes pea shooters, potato mines, and cherry bombs, to name a few.
Zombies become stronger and more frequent as each level progresses, and in each new area there's a new challenge, such as a pool or fog, or limited pot plant space on the roof.
The comparisons with tower defense are unavoidable, but after an hour you kind of forget that because Plants vs. Zombies does have its own unique style. Of course, it's not just enough to slap zombies in your game nowadays. No. What's so funny? No, it's not enough just to have zombies nowadays. You need to have a variety of zombies and a variety of ways to kill them. PopCap knows the score, and there's more zombies in this game than we have time to talk about. But we have to mention the athletic zombie, the swimming zombie, and our favorite, the thriller zombie.
These have ways around your defenses and their own counters. You can only bring 7 plants into each level, and this forces you to double up on plants that counter to more than one zombie.
The plethora of plant life available is quickly whittled down when you consider only half the plants are available during daytime missions and half for night. Then usually 5 out of your 7 slots are taken up with must-have plants, only giving you 2 slots to be creative with. I found I kind of settled into a routine, and the RTS player in me wasn't challenged, Badge. First 2 columns for resources, plant traps and guns where necessary. I was able to follow my formula right through to the end.
I disagree. I think there's enough depth here to defend your lawn and brain in a multitude of ways. And regardless, that's playing the game the wrong way. It tells you when the final wave of zombies is coming, allowing me to employ my extreme mower strat. Zombie carnage, Jung!
Yeah, the lulls are there, and PopCap make good games. You know, the difficulty ramps up perfectly, there's some fun mini-games. I was definitely held through all of the 50 levels, but I wouldn't go back to it. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Well, it's definitely on the casual end of the spectrum, but it's a very well-made game, and its compulsive gameplay is complemented by quality and hilarious animation. I'm giving it 9 out of 10.
Good game.
Badge, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I always admired the works of Raphael.
Oh, the painter.
No, the Ninja Turtle.
Oh, I wanted to be Michelangelo.
Ah, the Ninja Turtle!
No. In his recent series, Lawrence Leung had the adventure of a lifetime as he attempted to accomplish his childhood dreams.
Which included mastering the Game & Watch.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Leung from Choose Your Own Adventure. When I was a kid, I loved calculator watches. But more than calculator watches, I love Game & Watches. They're not really a watch, it's more like a clock. All the kids had these in primary school and I wanted one. I especially wanted Donkey Kong. The good thing about Donkey Kong is that it was one of the first Game & Watches which had the dual screen thing going on, which kind of blew everyone away. This is Donkey Kong. This is what all the kids were playing around my primary school. But when I wanted to have a Game & Watch, I begged my parents to get me one for Christmas. I want a Game & Watch. I want Donkey Kong. What did they get me? They got me this. They got me Helmet. Helmet's a Game & Watch where you have to get from one side of the screen, which is a shed, to the house on the other side of the screen, whilst from the sky rain down hammers, anvils, screwdrivers, toolkits, and all sorts of, spanners would fall from the sky, and you had to basically get across without getting hit. Something which I could relate to around my house in Box Hill North. Basically, it's a crap game. Take that, monkey. So a few years ago, I went on eBay and I picked up a Donkey Kong. Awesome, because it's quite easy to get on eBay. It's a very popular game. But ironically, Helmet on eBay is worth so much more because it's so rare. No one ever wanted to play it. No one ever bought it. So on eBay, it's worth heaps. My mum and dad were right. I should have kept it. I threw it out. I still like Donkey Kong, though. Come on, monkey, give me back my girl. Oh.
Good game.
It seems Guitar Hero is going down the path of The Sims, SingStar, and Survivor, with a new version being released right around every time Jung has his bi-monthly shower.
If you've watched Good Game for a while, you'll know how much we hated the last few spin-offs of Guitar Hero. But this time it's different. This time it's personal. This time it's Metallica. Yes, those formerly the enemy of the virtual revolution are now embracing it in an attempt to buy back their digital souls. And after an epic intro setting the tone beautifully for the whole game, I think it worked.
Songs are unlocked by how many stars you get in a bracket now, and they've got some great effects on the songs as well, such as the way the camera focuses on the band member doing the most, and the black and white effects, and the screen shaking in Sad But True. And it's the first time I've actually looked up from the game to see what the graphics are doing, and James Hetfield's face looks suitably strained, as it should. And the way they've achieved this is by getting the whole band in for motion capturing, and it really shows.
Certain songs are a little easier than they should be to allow everyone to enjoy them, and this is a good thing, such as the case with Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam, Nothing Else Matters. But if you want to pump Master of Puppets or Battery, it's gonna be painful, but it's that good kind of painful that makes you actually want to get better at the game just to do that track.
Around around half of the tracks are actually Metallica's and the rest were inspired by them or inspired them. Some of these are really good, such as playing the original Turn the Page.
Playing the star again. There I go. Turn the page.
Some of them, you wonder how they even got in there.
Unlike the Aerosmith spin-off, a good amount of thought has gone into the layout of the notes, so they're actually fun to play. If you get all of the star notes during a star power now, it doesn't just get wasted, it adds to the meter. If you're not a Metallica fan, you'll probably find most songs long and repetitive, but for Metallica fans, this is a must-have experience.
The HD lag problem still exists, and that's where the audio doesn't match up exactly with the video. And we even noticed on 1 or 2 songs, the calibration would change, so you'd have to be hitting a little earlier, and then it would change back. They've never been able to fix this problem, so it's really just luck of the draw whether your TV will have an issue.
Guess who just got back today? Them wild-eyed boys that had been away.
Like all Guitar Heroes, singing isn't a strength of the game. For example, the SingStar version of The Boys Are Back in Town is much better.
They were asking if you were around.
I don't know about you, but I don't have any friends that sound like James Hetfield anyway, but the bass, guitar, and drums are all tops. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I think light Metallica fans will only like about 8 or so of the songs, but those songs are great to play. And the main thing is, it's not another Rocks the 80s. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So, did you guess the game for this week?
It was Pit Fighter, an all-out brawler released by Atari all the way back in 1990.
You had to take your muscle-bound roid junkie throughout a series of sweaty bouts sporting a mullet haircut. Occasionally, Knife Woman or Knife Man would jump out of the crowd into the ring and try and stab you.
It was very tongue-in-cheek with over-the-top characters that meant the fun factor was high. It was also one of the earliest games to use digitized versions of real-life actors. So what's coming up next week, Badge?
Terminators.
That's right. The latest in time-traveling robot apocalypses is here, thanks to Terminator Salvation. Hopefully this time with no Christian Bale tantrums.
No promises, John. And we'll be giving the rubber chicken treatment to Damnation, a new shooter with a steampunk aesthetic.
Leadership required for the return of peace and prosperity.
And before there were pixels, there was pinball. Ray reintroduces us to the ancestor of arcade gaming and meets many gamers who still love and play pinball today.
Until next week, gamers, Bajo out. That's really gross.